Okay, so I'm going to do another one of these. I thought that worked really well, using the prompts true, false, weird, rant, and need a word for. And I've picked out another topic. You have to trust me that I did it honestly. And the topic is commit. And I'm going to have a slurp of this tea, which I make, which is supposed to be iced, which there's never enough ice for. Okay. So the topic that I'm going to talk about now is commit. So, true. Commitment and consistency is one of the most powerful drivers of human behavior. We all want to certainly be seen to honor our commitments and be consistent with what we say. And probably if you're the kind of person who falls for like evolutionary explanations of things, I'm not suggesting that we didn't evolve. I'm just saying kind of like some of the psychological explanations for why things happen in evolutionary terms are a bit dodgy. But anyway, complete digression. Probably the reason that we like to be seen to keep our word and like to be seen to be consistent with the things that we say is that when we're in smaller groups, it would be extremely bad to have a reputation for being somebody who didn't keep their word and didn't do the things that they say. And so this is a very, very powerful human urge. Lots and lots of experiments in the kinds of books that you might read if you're interested in psychology. And the book that I read that convinced me about this is a book by a chap called Robert Cialdini. The book's called Persuasion, the Psychology of Influence. And he has lots of experiments in there where people basically end up doing things that they don't really want to do because their adherence to commitment and consistency is being manipulated. So that's the true thing. False thing. What's a false thing about commitment and consistency? It's really easy to sidestep it. Once you've figured out that commitment and consistency is a way that you're being manipulated and is a fundamental way that people are manipulated in project management, it's really easy to just forget about it and not bother about it. It's absolute bollocks. It's not easy to forget about it at all. I know about it. I hardly think about anything else, and it's still a problem for me. Yesterday, I think, had somebody tell me that something was a contractual commitment and that we'd promised to it. We hadn't promised it at all. But this is one of the really, I'm not telling you false things, I'm telling you true things. This is one of the really, really interesting things about commitment and consistency. That it works even in situations where you know you didn't promise something, and the people who are forcing you to do the thing that they claim you didn't promise, they know you didn't promise it either. That's how powerful commitment and consistency is. It's truly crazy. So I tried to say a false thing there, but I ended up going on a kind of true-ish rant. Weird thing. Weird. Well, this is kind of really weird. I kind of like, rather than just saying something generally strange. In the Korean War, the Chinese, who were fighting on the communist side, obviously, with North Koreans, managed to get, depending on how you count, certainly in the high 80s, 90s% of American prisoners of war, to some degree, to collaborate with the Chinese government and the communists. Now, these were people who were fighting for their country, and they were Americans. They kind of really believed in the American way of life. But the Chinese in that war didn't torture them using physical methods, or certainly they didn't in China. What they did was they used lots and lots of methods that were involving commitment and consistency. And by doing that, they managed to mess with the minds of these people. And I think these were pretty tough guys, right? So they were American soldiers. They managed to mess with their minds. And a lot of them found it very difficult to deal with the way that they collaborated. Now, it might have, when I say collaborated, it might have been something like they said that America wasn't perfect. That's all they said. maybe they've been asked to say that. Maybe even this is like how dangerous the whole commitment and consistency thing is. Maybe they've been asked to copy down somebody else's essay where they said it into their own handwriting, and then later they've been shown their own handwriting and they've been told, well, you wrote this down. You say here that America's not perfect. Maybe you can give us some examples of how America's not perfect. These were professionals who were messing with the minds of these American soldiers. And in project management, the people that you're fighting against, some of them actually are pretty ropey. They're not very good. They're not Chinese Red Army psychological control grade people. They're just using basic aspects of commitment and consistency to mess with your fragile mind. So one of the most basic things that you see in projects is, well, I've committed to it, so you've committed to it. I get that all the time. Yeah, well, we've told our bosses that that's going to be when it's delivered, so you've committed to that date as well. Or the other thing is like kind of, as Robert Cialdini calls it, commitment and consistency jujitsu. So what's commitment and consistency jujitsu? Commitment and consistency jujitsu is saying, well, you promised this, and like that thing really kind of entailed this thing, and this is kind of the thing that the Chinese Red Army were doing. And so really, if you've committed to this thing, you've committed to this thing, etc. So you see that a lot as well as a way of trying to get out of the fact that lots of aspects of a project are inherently uncertain. So that's is that weird or is that rant? I don't think it is rant. I'm going to have another go at rant. If this is my second time through rant, I'm sorry. Okay, here's my rant. Nobody will hire you to do a project if you resist making a commitment. And sometimes I think that nobody will hire you to do a project unless they think you've made a bad commitment, unless they think you've made a commitment in which you're going to come out on the losing side. So kind of very often when you're asked to bid for a project, nobody will give you that money unless they think that you're going to lose out on it, that you're not going to make money on it. I'm ranting, remember? But also, it's inherent in the way that projects work that when you're making that commitment, that's the point at which you're at your least certain about what's really going to happen. You don't really know what's going to happen in this project. There's lots and lots of uncertainty. And of course, the people who are extracting this commitment from you aren't going to reveal any of the complexity that they know, any of the difficulties that they know about this project, because they want you to make a commitment on it. So this is kind of one of there are lots of inherent contradictions in project management, but this is one of them, that you're asked to make commitments, and very often the only kind of commitments anybody will really accept are ones that they think are a poor deal for you, and you're doing that at a point when you really shouldn't be making a commitment at all. And I'm astounded, in one sense, that we can't get away from this. Certainly in kind of new projects. I think really what you have to do is you have to establish over time a kind of environment of trust with people where they start to realize that when you say something's difficult, it is actually difficult, that you're not trying to trick them. And then you can probably start to build actual value. Because that's the thing, this approach of getting people to commit to something that isn't really a great commitment for them as a way of trying to get things delivered doesn't work. It doesn't deliver value because you've inherently built into that the fact that they're going to have to deliver something that's going to hurt them. So you have to kind of end up with a very different kind of relationship. It's mentioned in the Agile Manifesto, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Finally, need a word for. I think we need a word for that other thing that isn't commitment, that is kind of, it's a commitment to something different. It's a commitment to building something that's genuinely valuable for the organization and valuable for the users, but it's not about keeping a promise. I think we need a word for that kind of the thing is that it's less defined, of course. Like it's not a list of features in a kind of document. It's not a list of clauses in a contract. It's a more amorphous thing. And that more amorphous thing is the thing that's genuinely valuable. This is kind of very related to something else that I might be ranting about later, which is the biscuit tin and the biscuit.